Hello, everyone. I'm Danny Sebright, president of the U.S. U.A.E. Business Council. Today, with leading international law firm Morgan Lewis, we are proud to release a new study analyzing the policy and legal aspects of the Emirates Projects of the 50 and their implementation. This study is the third in a series of reports on the landmark projects of the 50. Today, I'm speaking with Bill Nash, managing partner at Morgan Lewis's offices in Abu Dhabi, and partner Ayman Khaleq, who co-leads the Middle East practice of Morgan Lewis. Bill, at the outset of this third report that the Business Council has published, this one in conjunction and collaboration with you, Morgan Lewis, on the projects of the 50, your firm remarks that the UAE has been very successful in delivering on its national vision and strategies to date. But you then comment, and I quote, "A more ambitious vision demands equally ambitious changes to policy and law. This is the essence of the projects of the 50. Bill, unpack this for us today for the audience.
The starting point for the statement that you cite is the ambition of the UAE as it celebrates its first 50 years and as it looks forward to its next 50 years. There are two quotes from the report that I'd like to highlight for you in connection with that statement. The first is from the second principles of the project, which reads that the UAE intends to, quote, build the best and most dynamic economy in the world. The second quote is from His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, the Vice President and Prime Minister of the UAE and the ruler of Dubai. And His Highness said, quote, "We are building a new reality for our people, for a new future for our children, and a model of development." So specific laws and regulation, each tailored for the needs of various stakeholders and each designed to both frame opportunities and guide behavior, in our view, are the primary tools the UAE will use to implement the visions of the projects of the 50. Again, to build the most dynamic economy in the world and a new reality for Emiratis. Our article, Legislative and Policy Aspects of the Project, focuses on these details: legislative measures, policy measures, everything from changes to company law and the court system to the modernization of immigration, data privacy, and tax laws.
Ayman, the report focuses on, with regard to reforms and the changes, it focuses on two main categories of economic and social reforms. Why highlight these two categories in particular?
This is a good question, and I think in answering it, I'd like to go back maybe 20 years. I remember when the region had a strong drive towards privatization in a number of jurisdictions, and I remember the stage when privatization was meant to usher in a new period of wealth and fortune for the region and an improvement in the economic affairs of its people, but that was not managed properly as far as social, even messaging was concerned, and how it backfired in many ways. Whereas here, what we see is that there's a strong appreciation that if we are to push through with certain policies and legal developments and reforms, we need those to be coupled with a number of social measures that in a way will soften the blow in certain areas, because these are new realities we have to deal with, but at the same time, prepare people for some of those changes and create a kind of environment that is an enabling environment for those reforms to come through.
That's exactly right, Ayman. And from the role of women to dealing with addressing marriage, these reforms in the social area are now some of the most progressive in the broader Arab world, which is just simply amazing for the UAE to be taking this lead in this way. But Bill, let's go back to business for a second. Let's go back to the basics of business. The report posits that one of the most significant of the recent changes to company law, and it's the liberalization of rules concerning foreign ownership of onshore UAE-based companies. Speak about that. Speak about the impact of that a little bit.
Yeah, certainly, Danny. The important background to the question is that until recently, all onshore UAE companies, other than branches, had to have at least 51% ownership, either by a UAE national or by a company wholly owned by UAE nationals. Under the new rules, up to 100%, so the majority of shares in an onshore company can be held by non-UAE nationals. subject to certain strategic restrictions for strategic areas. Unsurprisingly, security and defense, banking, finance, insurance, and areas like telecommunication. So really what the change does, the new regime eliminates a significant restriction on business entry. It removes a barrier to international companies thinking about how they will enter the UAE, thereby increasing the potential for the UAE to both boost foreign direct investment and also encourage entrepreneurship. And that second one, entrepreneurship, I think is important because now the UAE can now be seen, and you see this in some visa reforms, as a hub for global entrepreneurs looking for a place to base themselves. And so the change in ownership helps very much in that area.
And if I may add something here, and Bill, I think, would agree because of what we've been seeing, this is not really a massive shock sort of announcement or a new policy coming out of nowhere. If you really look back, the UAE has carved out a number of foreign ownership zones where foreign ownership was permitted to be at 100% and above. And those covered a number of sectors in the society and have been around for 20 years, 20 plus years in a number of cases. In addition, since the establishment of the DIFC and the ADGM, now we have the tools to restructure the businesses. It's not that they passed on the law and we didn't have the tools to do that. And today we have trust systems in place. We can create the kind of vehicles that would be conducive for a restructuring based on the implementation of the foreign investment law. So it all goes hand in hand and has been building up over time, so to speak.
Ayman, we're getting close to the end here, but I've got to ask you a question about taxes. We hear this talk about a 9% corporate tax coming in the future. Will the UAE really implement that by January 2023?
I believe that it will. I believe the days of zero tax environment are long gone. I think it's unsustainable. I think the rest of the world would not accept it. If you look at the OECD, the US, the EU, the common denominator, they're setting a new tax at a new tax base. 9% is still very, very competitive. Maybe the most competitive among all the developed countries because it comes even lower than Singapore's. So yes, that's the new world we would have to live in. I have no reason to hesitate or to question whether it's going to come through in 2023.
Got it. So finally, Bill, I'm going to give you the last word. There's just a lot to unpack from this outstanding report that your firm has published, written, the analysis that you put forward. We really appreciate that partnership. Just give us a word or two. We talked a lot about the positives. There's challenges along the way here. Give us a couple words about what are some of the challenges that the UAE and U.S. business are going to face in all of this, and maybe your thoughts on how we ameliorate the situation and make it all better.
Some of the project goals require sort of balancing potential competing interests. For example, on the one hand, encouraging innovation in virtual assets needs to be balanced with also introducing stricter AML measures, which is very important in the UAE. There are also certainly some external challenges, and these range from what is really an extremely just a competitive global economic landscape that we're all aware of, to what we hope is the back end of the pandemic. And then we should note it's folks who are focused on the region and are paying attention understand there's a neighbor, Saudi Arabia, that has very ambitious goals to also be a preeminent commercial and entrepreneurial hub, which many people see as a real challenge. Our view, and Ayman and I spend a lot of time focused on this issue, is that regional economics doesn't need to be a zero-sum game, and that the UAE and Saudi Arabia can complement one another as the overall regional economy transforms.
If there's one thing this country is good at is adapting and adjusting when there's a need to do so. So the plan is put in there. It's going to be implemented. If there's room for adjustment, circumstances change, COVID, what have you, we saw that the adaptability of the country and the resilience have been proven now, given the track record of the last few years.
Gents, it was wonderful to have you with us today, and just amazing collaboration in publishing this report and this analysis. Thank you to you and your teams, and we value very much the support, the partnership that we have.